in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Chinese equities plunged to almost 8% on Monday as nervous traders returned from their extended Lunar New Year break, hit by fears that the deadly coronavirus could hammer the country's economy.
China says it is trying to tackle an urgent need for medical equipment and surgical masks as the death toll from a new coronavirus jumps above 360.
A man wearing a hoax device shot dead by police in London after stabbing two people had recently been released from prison for previous terrorism offenses.
And the EU and Britain opened hostilities in Brexit's next bruising chapter on Monday, laying down tough red lines for a post-divorce future following the UK's dramatic exit from the bloc.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. China accused the United States on Monday of spreading panic in its response to the deadly coronavirus, including imposing a ban on Chinese travelers. The U.S. hasn't provided any substantial assistance and has only created panic, according to Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying at a regular press briefing. Washington on Friday declared a public health emergency and temporarily banned the entry of foreign nationals who have traveled to China over the past 2 weeks to contain the spread of the outbreak. Sweeping new restrictions will also be imposed on American citizens, with those returning from the province at the disease's epicenter placed in facilities for a mandatory 14-day quarantine. There have been 8 confirmed U.S. cases of the new coronavirus, which originated in a live seafood market in Wuhan in China's Hubei province. The virus has since spread to more than 24 countries, despite many governments imposing unprecedented travel bans on people coming from China. The World Health Organization has already declared the outbreak a global emergency, and the Chinese death toll has risen to 362, while total infections reached over 17,000, surpassing the SARS epidemic of two decades ago. Now, on Sunday, the first foreign death from the virus was reported in the Philippines.
A total of 1,400 assigned medical staff from the People's Liberation Army on Sunday began the preparation work for incoming viral pneumonia patients at the newly built Hushanshan Hospital in Wuhan City, central China's Hubei province. The 57 confirmed new deaths was the single biggest increase since the virus was detected late last year in the central city of Wuhan, where it is believed to have jumped from animals at a market into humans. The virus has since spread to more than 24 countries, despite many governments imposing unprecedented travel bans on people coming from China. The special-built Hushanshan Hospital in Wuhan in Hubei province, the epicenter of the outbreak, has been equipped with state-of-the-art medical equipment and ventilation systems and was built in just 8 days. A second hospital with 1,500 beds is also under construction in the city and is due to open soon.
The Department of Health announced today that at least 30 patients under investigation have been found negative for the novel coronavirus, acute respiratory disease. Now, the 30 are among the total of 80 PUIs recorded in the country as of 12 p.m. on Monday, February 3. DOH Secretary Francisco Duque said of the 80 PUIs, 67 have been admitted and isolated in different hospitals, while 10 were discharged but are still under strict monitoring. Also included in the list are the 2 positive cases, a 38-year-old Chinese woman who remains in isolation at San Lazaro Hospital and her 44-year-old partner who died on Saturday, as well as the 29-year-old Chinese man who died at San Lazaro Hospital last week. Take a look.
Ito pong pagtaas ng ating PUIs ay nangangahulugan na ang atin pong pagmamatsyag o surveillance ay atin nang napaunlad. So, much better surveillance system at ganoon din po ang contact tracing natin ng Epidemiology Bureau. At atin pong pinalawig din ang ating PUI category to the whole of China. So hindi lang po ito Wuhan or Hubei, kundi buong China na po. At ito pong kahapon na deklara ng ating Pangulo yung imposition ng travel ban to mainland China, including Hong Kong and Macau. No? Kasama po yan.
Meanwhile, Dr. Ferchito Avellino, chief of the DOH's epidemiology, announced that they have already found the people who came in contact with the Chinese couple who tested positive for the 2019 novel coronavirus.
As of today, meron na tayong nakuhang 74 na contacts nung dalawang pasyente na positibo sa nCoV. At sila po ay nabigyan na rin ng nararapat na advice kung anong gagawin nila with regards to home quarantine. Gusto namin linawin na ang home quarantine na sinasabi natin, ito po ay parang isolation lang din sa loob ng bahay. Ibig sabihin, wala silang privilege na makipag-alubilo sa miyembro ng kanilang pamilya. Doon sa PUI na reported today, may nakitaan tayo na sa contact tracing, may nagkaroon ng may sinyales ng symptoms ng ubo at sipon. At ito ay nakasama na sa bilang na ating rinireport ngayon.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Francisco Duque was careful to highlight that the second confirmed carrier of the 2019 novel coronavirus who died on Saturday is recorded as a death on the part of China. And that means that the Philippines still maintained zero local transmission.
The two are imported cases. And the one who died is on statistics for China. Okay, that's not for us because ours, zero local transmission.
And here's where 2019 nCoV has been confirmed. Take a look. China, as of Monday, 17,205 people have been infected across China, the majority in and around Wuhan. Most of the 362 who have died were in that region, but officials have confirmed multiple deaths elsewhere, including in the capital, Beijing. Asia-Pacific region, Australia, 12 patients have been confirmed in Australia. Most of them arrived in the country from Hubei province. Cambodia's health ministry has so far reported one case, a 60-year-old man who arrived from Wuhan. In Hong Kong, 15 people are known to have the disease. India's health ministry on Sunday confirmed the country's second case, which, like the first, is in the southern state of Kerala. The ministry said the new case was being treated in isolation at a hospital. Japan's health ministry reported 3 new cases on Saturday, bringing the number of infections in the country to 20, including 2 cases of human-to-human transmission. The new cases were 3 people who returned from Wuhan on government-chartered flights. Macau has confirmed 8 cases. Malaysia has confirmed 8 cases, all Chinese nationals. Nepal has reported 1 case so far, a man who arrived from Wuhan. The Philippines on Sunday reported the first death from the virus outside mainland China. Authorities said the 44-year-old Chinese man had arrived in the Philippines from Wuhan. The country now has 2 cases. The first case detected in the Philippines was a 38-year-old woman who had arrived with a man from Wuhan. She is recovering in hospital. Singapore Saturday announced 2 new infections, bringing the city-state's total to 18. South Korea has so far confirmed 15 cases. They include a South Korean man in his 20s who returned from Wuhan on a chartered plane, a 40-year-old Chinese woman whose husband was diagnosed with the virus, and a 43-year-old South Korean man who returned from Wuhan on January 20. Sri Lanka has confirmed one infection, a 43-year-old Chinese tourist from Hubei province. Taiwan has uncovered 10 cases so far, including 2 female Chinese nationals in their 70s who arrived in the country as part of a tour group. Thailand has announced 19 confirmed infections. Vietnam has reported a total of 8 cases. To North America now, Canada has confirmed 4 cases. The United States has confirmed 11 cases, 6 in California, 2 in Illinois, 1 in Arizona, 1 in Massachusetts, and 1 in Washington State. To Europe now, British health officials on Friday announced that 2 people had tested positive for the virus, the country's first confirmed cases. In Finland, a tourist from Wuhan tested positive for the virus on Wednesday and was being treated in isolation in hospital, officials said. There are 6 known cases in France, the first European country to be affected. Germany now has 10 confirmed cases after 2 people evacuated from China tested positive for the virus on Sunday. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced the first 2 cases in his country on Thursday, 2 Chinese tourists who recently arrived in Italy. Russia said Friday that 2 Chinese citizens had tested positive in the country's first cases. Sweden on Friday announced its first case, a woman whose nationality has not been revealed. Spain reported its first case late on Friday in a man on the island of La Gomera in Canaries. He was one of 5 people isolated after coming into contact with a German with the illness. In the Middle East, the UAE on Saturday reported a 5th case, a man who returned from Wuhan. He is in stable condition. Earlier, health officials confirmed a Chinese family of 4 tested positive for the virus after arriving from Wuhan.
Meanwhile, hundreds of Hong Kong medical workers walked off their jobs on Monday, demanding the city close its border with China to reduce the coronavirus spreading, with frontline staff threatening to follow suit in the coming days. Take a look.
It is our union's first day of the strike plan. Our demand is asking the hospital authority management level to urge the Hong Kong government to push pressure on the Hong Kong government to shut the border. As a healthcare professionals, we really don't want to strike, but we have no choice as the government and the management level do not hear our sound, do not hear our opinion before our strike action. If the government acts fast enough to close the border, the possible community outbreak in Hong Kong could be avoided. So I think most of our union members are very angry with the slow response from the government.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong announced it was closing all but 2 land crossings with the Chinese mainland on Monday to slow the spread of a deadly new coronavirus. On Monday afternoon, city leader Carrie Lam said all land crossings would be closed at midnight except for 2 bridges, the first connecting Hong Kong to Shenzhen and the second linking it with Zhuhai and casino hub Macau. The city's airport, one of the world's busiest, would remain open to mainlanders, although there are already restrictions on people from central Hubei province where the epidemic began. Lam said the latest closures, which came after 4 crossings were shuttered last week, would reduce the number of Chinese mainlanders and allow officials to focus resources on 2 land entry points as well as the airport. She reiterated her view that a complete closure of the border would be impractical, economically damaging, and discriminatory given the close links between Hong Kong and the mainland. The semi-autonomous financial center has 15 confirmed cases of the disease, most brought from the mainland where the epidemic began, and has so far killed more than 360 people.
Meanwhile, China is pressing medical equipment suppliers in the country to speed up the production of surgical masks. As the foreign ministry said, it urgently needs protective equipment, medical equipment, and the death toll from the highly contagious coronavirus past that of the SARS crisis. Take a look.
大大缓解，我们把它定义为目前属于一种紧平衡的状态。应该总体来说，这个刚才我也谈到，物资供应它从恢复复工复产，它这个周期啊，还是有一点时间。所以目前来，到2月2日24点截止，我们总共协调国内生产企业累计向湖北发送了医用防护服15.4万件，运抵13.12万件。N95 口罩呢，发货了是13.36万件。当然，口罩现在。
At full capacity, China's factories are only able to produce around 20 million masks a day, according to the Ministry of Industry. Chen Yulong of the Industry Ministry said earlier that authorities were taking steps to bring in masks from Europe, Japan, and the U.S., adding that supply and demand in China remained in tight equilibrium as factories returned to production after the Lunar New Year lull. He also said they were now operating at between 60% and 70% capacity. In addition to Hubei, the province of more than 50 million people at the center of the outbreak, several other provinces and cities across China have made it compulsory to wear masks in public as the virus fears have grown. Now, these include Guangdong, China's most populous province, plus Sichuan, Jiangxi, Liaoning, and the city of Nanjing, with a combined population of more than 300 million.
Russia plans to deport foreigners diagnosed with the novel coronavirus, Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin said Monday as the government postponed an investment forum over the deadly infection. Now it's being added to the list of especially dangerous illnesses that will allow us to deport foreign citizens if they are diagnosed with such an illness, Mishustin said in a televised government meeting. He also said that an annual investment forum in Sochi that was due to take place in mid-February would be postponed. Russia has 2 confirmed cases of the virus, and both are Chinese citizens being treated in Siberian hospitals. Deputy Prime Minister Tatyana Golikova said more than 900 Russians flew back from China in the last 2 days on charter and regular flights, and Russia is set to evacuate some 130 people from Hubei province, epicenter of the epidemic.
Meanwhile, Lucy Wang, a documentary maker living in Beijing, is unable to see her family in Wuhan, which is the epicenter of the ongoing virus epidemic. Now, she said that people from the region are being stigmatized in the wake of the outbreak. Take a look.
"希望大家可以善待武汉人，因为武汉非常脆弱现在。然后我相信，包括我在内，所有的武汉人都不希望这件事情发生。我们也希望它能够很快的得到一个缓解。但是就是现在这个阶段，就是大家对我们的指责其实是有一些不公平的。 我觉得我们的敌人一直都是病毒本身，而不应该是湖北人或者武汉人，因为大家都是受害者。我觉得在现在这样一个年代，我们就是不要再去揣测，就是那么恶意的去揣测说有很多人过来是恶意传播。
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
The British government promised sweeping changes to the system for dealing with convicted terrorists released from prison after police shot dead an Islamist extremist who stabbed 2 people in a busy South London street on Sunday. Police said Sudesh Aman, 20, who was wearing a fake suicide vest, was shot on the busy Streatham High Road, packed with shoppers at about 2 p.m. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Lucy Diorsi said in a statement outside New Scotland Yard, the suspect had been recently released from prison where he had been serving a sentence for Islamist-related offenses. Aman was jailed in December 2018 for 13 terror offenses and was released from prison in recent weeks under active police surveillance, the media said. He had been arrested in North London in May 2018 on suspicion of planning a terrorist attack, a month after officers were told of posts he had made on the secure messaging service Telegram. Here's a witness to the attack.
It was just quite overwhelming and confusing more than anything else, while everyone was just trying to make heads or tails of what was happening. When we saw the armed police, it was like, oh wow, this must be really serious. This must be something like quite bad for there to be loads of police with guns. Stabbed, I thought it might have been like young kids fighting. I didn't know it was like a terrorist thing until about 15 minutes later, and in that immediate moment I feel quite unsafe. Obviously, I live in the street over from here, so it's all nice things to be happening right on the doorstep.
Counter-terror officers were conducting searches at one address in South London and one in Bishop's Stortford, north of the capital near London's Stansted Airport. Sunday's incident in the South London suburb of Streatham came just over 2 months after a similar incident when armed police shot dead a convicted terrorist on early release near London Bridge in the heart of the city. He had stabbed to death 2 people attending a prisoner rehabilitation conference. Britain downgraded the country's terrorism threat level from severe to substantial warning, and a terrorist attack is likely rather than highly likely in early November, its lowest rating in more than 5 years.
Going now to Tanzania, 20 people were trampled to death at an open-air evangelical church service in the north of the country, according to officials. Take a look. Kipi Warioba, district commissioner in the northern town of Moshi, said he feared the number of the dead could still rise from the accident, which took place on Saturday. The tragedy happened when a crowd of worshippers was attending a prayer ceremony led by the popular preacher Boniface Mwamposa, who heads the Arise and Shine Ministry Tanzania. The stampede occurred when Mwamposa, who calls himself the Apostle, poured what he said was holy oil on the ground, and then the crowd surged toward to touch it in the hope of being cured of sickness, according to witnesses. Now, Mwamposa, the preacher, fled the scene after the stampede, and police appealed in a broadcast on national television for him to hand himself in. Tanzanian police said investigations were ongoing into the incident. 7 others were arrested in Moshi, where the stampede took place, in connection with the incident.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology said about 153 volcanic earthquakes, including 2 low-frequency earthquakes, were recorded from Taal volcano in the past 24 hours. The continuing quakes showed magmatic activity that could lead to eruptive activity at the main crater, it said. FIVOS reminded the public that sudden steam-driven and even weak magmatic explosions, volcanic earthquakes, ashfall, and lethal volcanic gas expulsions could still occur and threaten the areas within Taal Volcano Island and the nearby lake shores. It recommended no entry into Taal Volcano Island, as well as into the areas over Taal Lake and communities west of the island within a 7-kilometer radius from the main crater. Meanwhile, now that the alert level for Taal volcano has been lowered from 4 to 3, Senator Sani Angara urged all concerned government agencies to immediately conduct an assessment of the damage brought about by the eruption 2 weeks ago. Angara, who is chairman of the Finance Committee that went over the 4.1 trillion General Appropriations Act for 2020, said there was a significant amount of funding available for use of the different government agencies.
To the U.S. now, Democratic candidates made their frantic final campaign pitches in Iowa on a mission to persuade undecided voters 1 day before the state's nominating contest officially starts the U.S. presidential election season. Iowa, a largely rural state of 3 million people, has traditionally served as a vital launching point or burial ground for presidential hopefuls. Even as all eyes turn to the debut vote, President Donald Trump's U.S. Senate impeachment trial weighs over the Democratic kickoff, with the president expected to be acquitted just days after the Iowa contest. Take a look.
So here it is, Iowa. This is the most consequential election, certainly in the modern history of this country, maybe in the overall history of America, and it all begins tomorrow night in Iowa. If there is a low voter turnout tomorrow night, if you hear some guy on TV saying, well, turnout is not too high, we're going to lose the election. We'll lose the caucus tomorrow. But if the voter turnout is high, if people who do get involved, who do not usually get involved, come on out to caucus. If young people, if working class people come on out, not only can we win, I think we can win big.
And this is our chance, our time.
Sanders holds only a narrow lead over moderate former Vice President Joe Biden. South Bend, Indiana ex-Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Elizabeth Warren are mere points behind. Take a look.
I think we can turn, God willing, 4 years of Donald Trump, assuming we don't start a war in the meantime, into a sort of historical aberration. But 8 years of Donald Trump, I think, will fundamentally change the nature of who we are as a people. And I think that that is the overwhelming, overarching question. Who among us is most likely to be able to defeat Donald Trump?
I'm also here, though, to make the case that you don't have to choose between the best way to govern and the best way to win. That actually the best way to do both of those things is to leave the politics of the past in the past and to be focused on the future.
Couple letters from...
As caucus night draws ever nearer in Iowa, longtime caucus organizer for the Democratic Party, John Deeth, described what will unfold on the historical evening that kicks off official 2020 voting. Take a look.
Got an auditorium here divided into sections. That's a nice natural division. So the chair might put Bernie over here, might put Warren over here, might put Buttigieg over there. You can see the nice clear dividers. Sometimes a small group stakes out too big of a section and you have to get them to move, and they're not happy about it because they're not accepting the fact that you're a small group and you're minutes away from having to realign. People just kind of choose their corner, hold up their signs, and they gravitate to the place they're going to gravitate. There'll be a sign-in line. People can register to vote, or they may appear already on the pre-printed list, and then they go to their corner. You have to have 15% of the room in order to be eligible for that. That's called viability. So the bigger groups are able to send people on to the next level, and then there's multiple levels before you get to the national convention in Milwaukee. The smaller groups have to go to a second choice, and they can either do that based on who's their second favorite, or they do that based on which candidate do I want to do the most damage to. Unlike 2016, when you basically had two strong candidates, 2008, you had three strong candidates. This one is kind of anybody's ball game right now, and those realignments are going to make a bigger difference than they did in 2016 when they really weren't a factor. People be, I think, more cheering than yelling. You get that person who walks over from the uncommitted group on the stage over to the Howard Dean group, let's say, then everybody cheers when they get one. And then there's a lot of pleading. The deal making, again, has kind of gone out the window because of the size of the crowds, but it does get exciting.
Singapore distributes masks to households after panic buyers clear pharmacy shelves as China's coronavirus epidemic spreads worldwide. Watch this.
Meanwhile, Panama will repatriate this week 72 Panamanian students who have completed their studies in China. Take a look.
En relación a los estudiantes que se encontraban en la República de China, nosotros hemos tomado la decisión de que requieran ser observados y este proceso de observación va a requerir que cumplan un término de 14 días. Realmente no van a estar aislados, ellos están en observación en un centro donde van a tener todos los cuidados. Nosotros, igual los que están en casa, están en observación en sus domicilios, así que vamos a tener dos modalidades.
Now, this Sunday, a first group of 15 students from different cities in the Asian country arrived. They did so through stopovers because Panama doesn't offer direct airline flights from China.
Hundreds of residents of a remote Indonesian island protested Monday at the government's decision to use it to quarantine evacuees from the Chinese city at the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak. These are Indonesian evacuees, mostly university students from Wuhan, arrive at Hang Nadiem International Airport in Batam, Indonesia, and are sprayed with disinfectant. Indonesia has evacuated 237 citizens and one foreign national married to an Indonesian from Wuhan. The evacuees, mostly students, landed Sunday and will be quarantined for 14 days on Natuna Island, which lies between Borneo and peninsular Malaysia. The government's decision to quarantine Indonesians who returned from China has made people feel uneasy, so we strongly reject it. Fadila, one of the protesters who, like many Indonesians, goes with one name, said. The protesters wearing green surgical masks demonstrated in front of the local parliament building, demanding the local authorities relocate the evacuation center away from a residential area.
Meanwhile, cruise lines worldwide will deny boarding to passengers and crew who have recently traveled to China, according to a global industry body, as fears grow over the new coronavirus. Now, in a statement, the Cruise Lines International Association, or CLIA, said its members were taking extra precautions to prevent the outbreak of the virus on board cruise ships, where infections can spread rapidly. CLIA members have suspended crew movements from mainland China and will also deny boarding to any individual, whether guest or crew, who has traveled from or through mainland China within the previous 14 days, according to the body's Hamburg office. CLIA represents some of the world's largest and best-known cruise lines, including TUI AIDA, MSC, Costa Royal Caribbean, and Carnival Cruises.
Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Mga kababayan, lalo na sa mga OFWs sa Middle East at North Africa, may good news kami para sa inyo. Mapapanood na ninyo ang Net25 at iba pang Filipino channels na hatid ng OSN sa presyong abot kaya. Libre na ang box at installation, walang admin fees at no extra charges. Saktong entertainment na sakto lang sa budget mo. Bumisita na sa pinakamalapit na OSN store o dealer. And subscribe now! Sa Net25 at OSN, siguradong at home ka dito.
Chinese stocks collapsed on Monday, with hundreds of firms plunging by the maximum 10% as investors got their first chance in more than a week to react to a barrage of bad news from the spiraling coronavirus outbreak. Now, the benchmark Shanghai Composite Index ended the morning session down 8.13% at 2,734.66, while the Shenzhen Composite Index, which tracks stocks on China's second exchange, was down 8.30% to 1,611.04. Hong Kong went into the break 0.9%, up at 26,336.41 on bargain buying after being battered last week. The scale of the plunge was remarkable even by the standards of China's notoriously volatile share markets, indicating deep concern over the economic impact of the epidemic, which has now killed more than more people than SARS in 2003. Now, the last time Chinese indices had plunged in excess of 8% in a day was when an equities bubble popped nearly 5 years ago. The yuan also weakened more than 1.5% to around 7.02 per dollar. Stock markets worldwide have sunk as major corporate names froze or scaled back their Chinese operations, threatening global supply chains that depend heavily on the country.
Hong Kong confirmed Monday it plunged into recession in 2019, suffering its first annual contraction in a decade as the city buckled under the twin pressures of the U.S.-China trade war and months of furious pro-democracy protests. The data was released as the semi-autonomous city begins a Lunar New Year, facing another economic crisis, the outbreak of a deadly new coronavirus strain, which began on the Chinese mainland and is compounding Hong Kong's economic woes. Last year was the worst for Hong Kong's growth since 2009, when the financial hub was hit hard by the global financial crash. The crisis was initially sparked by the trade war between Beijing and Washington, hitting the export-heavy economy. But the hard times were made worse by months of seething and often violent protests seeking greater democracy and police accountability. Official figures released on Monday showed Hong Kong's gross domestic product shrank 1.2% on year for 2019. The fourth quarter, which witnessed the worst violence between police and protesters, clocked a 2.9% contraction, the third straight quarter of declines.
And the European Union will offer Britain a close post-Brexit trading relationship, but they are demanding tough terms on fisheries and a level playing field for businesses. Now, this is according to Chief Negotiator Michel Barnier. Let's listen in.
We are ready to offer a highly ambitious trade deal as the central pillar of this partnership, including zero tariffs and zero quotas on all goods entering our single market of 450 million people.
Now, Mr. Barnier was unveiling his negotiating mandate ahead of talks with Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government on the EU's future relations with Britain after the post-Brexit transition period. Separately, his boss, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, said the talks should stick to what had already been agreed in a pre-Brexit political declaration between the two sides. Take a look.
It is very clear that there is a political declaration that has been signed by both sides. This is by the Prime Minister too. And we're sure that he's going to stick to it because it's, as I said, negotiated and signed and actually ratified by both parliaments on both sides. From our side, no surprises. We are consistent. There are offers to different models. The closer the UK wants to be, the easier the access to the single market, but nothing comes for free. So access to the single market is of high value. It's the largest single market in the world. It's of utmost importance, and therefore I think it's only a matter of fairness to also play by the rules then.
Europe's chief negotiator for Brexit, Michel Barnier, told reporters that this agreement over fishing was likely to be the first and most serious division. British fishermen want to bar EU counterparts from their waters, but want to keep the EU as their main market for fish exports. But Mr. Barnier's vision will fly in the face of that of Johnson, who insists that Britain's alignment with Europeans on rules and regulations defies the spirit of Brexit and is a thing of the past.
We will not engage in some cutthroat race to the bottom. We are not leaving the EU to undermine European standards. We will not engage in any kind of dumping, whether commercial or social or environmental, And don't just listen to what I say or what we say. Look at what we do.
Patrick Mahomes led a thrilling late comeback as the Kansas City Chiefs ended their 50-year wait for a Super Bowl crown with a 31-20 victory over the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. Chiefs quarterback Mahomes shrugged off an error-strewn start to overturn a 2010 49ers fourth-quarter lead in a gripping battle for the Vince Lombardi Trophy at the Hard Rock Stadium. The Super Bowl win was Kansas City's first NFL championship since their triumph over the Minnesota Vikings in 1970 and only their second ever. The Chiefs quarterback had looked out of sorts until early in the fourth quarter, throwing 2 interceptions in the face of fierce pressure from the magnificent San Francisco defense led by the marauding Nick Bosa. But with the game on the line in the fourth quarter, Mahomes led his team on 2 long drives to set up touchdowns for tight end Travis Kelce and running back Damian Williams. Those scores put the Chiefs into a 24-20 lead, and Kansas City made the game safe when Williams danced up the sideline for a 38-yard rushing score with 1 minute 12 seconds remaining. Mahomes finished with 286 passing yards and 26 completions from 42 attempts with 2 touchdowns.
Australia Day, celebrated on the 26th of January, is an important date in Australia's history. Here are our EBC correspondents, Shilin, Ryan Andrews, Andrea Colleen Briwega, and Patricia Madronio.
January 26, as the country's national day, Australia Day is celebrated with pride amongst Australians. 230 years ago, European settlers arrived in the land. The rest became history. Today, Australia is home for a culturally diverse people, flying the Australian flag from businesses, homes, cars, and even their babies to mark the celebration of Australia Day. They attend festivals, fireworks, community and sporting events, or gather for family barbecues at homes, parks, or on the beach. As the significance of this day differs amongst the nation's population, let's take a look at how Australia Day is celebrated in the country's key places.
Happy Australia Day! Australia Day is a day to celebrate how multicultural our nation has become. Brisbane has lined up festivities for this important occasion, from firework displays, family picnics, market to all-nighter social. Whatever you have in mind for the day, there's an event out there to cater for it.
The moment every Brisbaneite waits for an Australia Day, Brisbane Fireworks. There are several vantage points worth visiting to get the spectacular view of the display. River cruise companies such as Kookaburra River Queens and Brisbane Cruises offer scenic sailings timed to ensure yours is the best seat in the house when the fireworks start. Recommended viewing locations are Clem Jones Promenade, the Cultural Forecourt, and River Quay. In some places, one would also find food stalls, live music, performers, lamington eating competitions, and games. There's the Great Australian Bites Food Festival in regional Queensland that features the best fodder of the area in the form of pop-up stalls by local providers and makers, accompanied by local entertainment. There's also the Australia Day Long Lunch in Brisbane, the ultimate barbecue with mates and strangers.
Reporting from Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, this is Colleen Bruega, and I am one with 25.
Despite a large emphasis on tourism and extravagant celebrations to commemorate special events, the city of Gold Coast was relatively quiet during Australia Day. Importance was placed upon spending quality time with loved ones and friends. With malls and stores closed for the day, families came together around the Gold Coast to celebrate the serene and pristine Sunday. The beaches and coasts were sprawling with those looking to beat the summer heat with a morning in the waves. Many of the public parks and recreational areas hosted a number of families enjoying their public holiday with a casual picnic. For some, Australia Day was spent at home simply enjoying the peaceful company of others. Schools also pushed their schedules back to allow students an extra day to celebrate with their families. We'd like to wish everyone a very happy Australia Day. My name is Patricia Madronio from Gold Coast, Australia, and I am one with 25.
Australia Day is celebrated each year on the anniversary of the first fleet from Britain landing in Sydney Cove. However, there are more growing movements of people who feel the holiday must change date or theme on account of the terrible impact of colonisation on the Indigenous people, who called Australia home for tens of thousands of years before the Europeans arrived. Nevertheless, the festivities for Australia Day continue. Citizenship ceremonies across the nations are being held for people becoming citizens of Australia. It is also the day that the Australian government recognises the citizens and other people for achievement or meritorious service by giving them the Order of Australia. Reporting from Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, this is Celine Ryan Andrews, and I'm one with 25.
Thanks, guys, our Australian Bureau.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also, check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I am Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here, I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.